For sure, for sure. Well, where are you coming out of?
I live in Gonzales, Louisiana. It's between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Okay,
It's
okay.
sort of my native area. I've lived all over the Southeast. I've worked all over the country, but I've lived all over the Southeast during my career. And this is home. And
Yeah.
I'll be 60 in a couple of months. And I'm fortunate enough to have both parents still alive, living here and all that. So, um, yeah, being here's it's home for me. And as hot and miserable and other things it can be, it's also some things that are great about South Louisiana. So,
Yeah, no, I remember the heat when I was down there. I went down to Baton Rouge. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, so we're we're
cool.
we're well acquainted with that here.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially this year. It's been like crazy hot, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But to me it seems typical. I think the media has kind of grabbed on because it's affected so many people, but
Yeah.
overall it's yeah, it's all good, you know.
Good.
Yeah. But
Good.
But yeah, it's great to meet you. And I'd like to begin our conversation with, 4 years ago we were trying to figure out how long this whole pandemic was going to last. And ultimately, how did you survive that time period? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
So that's a really great question. We were definitely nervous about that because how would people react in terms of having us in, right? So all of our sessions that we do, we are typically in someone's office. Some of them like to rent outside spaces, but we're typically in someone's office doing our work. So we were definitely worried about it, and we lost a few clients. It made sense that they just their revenue went to zero, and some we even had to say, "Look, you're going to have to fire us," and they hated it, but they just had to make these tough financial decisions. Some of those have come back. But what we end up doing a lot of was talking about what's that line in A Hunt for Red October when he says, during a fire, I think it's a great time to run a missile drill because that's where you find out, you pressure test what you're doing. We use that a lot with our clients. It's a great time to pressure test what we believe is working and what's not. And so you can see any economic downturn, no matter what why it's predicated, it matters less, and say, well, here's what's going to happen, right? Even in the worst of times, the depression, 25% unemployment. That means 75% of the people were still working and there was still money flowing around. And so what happens in the industry in these little economic downturns, these challenging situations, is the bottom feeders get shaken out. Those that were trading dollars, right? So are you at the elite level in your marketplace? Are you selling an elite product, an elite level product or service? Have you positioned it that way? Have you priced it that way? Did you deliver in that way? And if so, let's cherry pick the clients that have become available because these bottom feeders are gone and actually do better. So we had clients that had windfall profits and windfall gains during those times rather than getting hammered as much because of how we focused on it. We saw it's try to see it as an opportunity rather than a hindrance to business.
So let's get to the heart and soul of exactly what you do as, kind of an expert in being a business architect and customer operating systems. I want to know, if I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day and one of the kids curiously said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Okay, now I have to like switch my language, right, to fit the third grade ears. So, because I'm a fan of the entire vocabulary, if you will. So, uh, I would tell them is that we take successful business owners and help them be even more successful. That's the simplest way that I can put it for a third grade audience, right? I would to a more mature audience, I would say we don't work with startups and we don't work as these sort of rescue missions. We work with people that are already successful, but they've hit a ceiling. And that ceiling could exist because of management. It could be their style. It could be their product selections. It could be the way they're operating. It could be that they're having internal problems. They should have external problems, people problems, or different things, right? They hit a limit, and in their current way of operating, they cannot get any bigger. And that might happen to someone at a million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million, 100 million. The number doesn't really matter, but they'll hit this ceiling, and it seems like there's just no getting beyond it. And what it amounts to is the mindsets and skill sets and operational systems that were necessary for them to get to their current level are insufficient to get them to the next level.
Gotcha.
right? And that's akin to, like, think about grade school. You know, if you'd have ejected yourself from the fifth grade directly into high school with the same skill sets and mindsets you operated the hallways of primary school at, you'll get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
There has to be some maturity. You start to do things differently. You behave differently. You communicate differently. You act differently. You have different targets and goals, and the way you think. It's the same thing in business. It's just really hard sometimes convincing a successful entrepreneur who's done it this way for however long. This is what got me here. I know, but it's not what's going to get you to the next level.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Man, in the third grade, I wanted to be an attorney.
Okay.
And I had some attorneys and some politicians in my family, and still do. And that's what I thought I wanted to be. And then because I could be pretty argumentative. But then briefly after that, I just wanted to be I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on stage, and I was accepted to some of the top acting schools in the country. I just couldn't afford to go to those. And teaching and training and being in front of a crowd, in front of a group of people, and all that is real similar to what I love about being on stage. So.
So how did you get to this point? Take me back to where you were born and raised and how you became an expert and how you became, how did this role evolve in your life?
Well, I love to tell the story that I began my entrepreneurial journey at about 6 years old. My neighbor and I that lived across the street, we were going to dig a hole from my backyard under my house, under the road, under his house to his backyard, so we could go back and forth to play. This was our idea. Of course, we got about 5 or 6 feet deep, which is deeper than we were. We weren't even that tall, and had all this dirt. And I had the ingenious idea, let's put this in little plastic sandwich bags. We put it on my wagon and we drug it all over the neighborhood trying to sell dirt to people. We sucked. It didn't work out. We didn't even get the courtesy quarter. Nice try, kid. I mean, we got nothing. And it was a failed idea. Of course, I can look back and see, well, we had some, we had some marketing issues, we had some packaging issues and some brand messaging issues. But that I think kind of launched me on this journey, coming from a blue collar family, but just decided that exploring the world of business meant everything to me. And what's most important to me, it's the means by which I get to help people develop and improve their lives, because that's really what it's about. To me, every business problem, yes, we work on process, operating systems, specifics, numbers, scoreboards, all these things, but the truth comes down to it's all about the people and having great people and developing great people. When you do that, you change their lives and the lives of yourselves and your people and your company, right? Everything shifts when the whole team elevates. And so that's always been the premise and has really been my journey since early in my retail career, which is kind of where I got started. I was literally hired as a stock boy for a company and ended up being a regional manager in that organization, and as a vice president in banking and then a business owner the past 20 years. It's always been about the people to me.
Yeah. So who's been a hero? Who's been a role model for you?
That's a great question. I've got so many. I don't really have any that are the well-known folks, like, there aren't any of those people. There've been people along the path in my life that have taught me so many fantastic lessons about leadership. I just saw one. Here's a great story. I just saw him on a video call Saturday night, and I hadn't seen this guy in almost 30 years. But he'd hooked up with another friend of mine at the beach of South Carolina, and they phoned me. Oh, we were having this cool conversation. And he and I were having a conversation at a meeting in the Bahamas years ago, and I was a new district manager. And I was complaining because I had all these problems, and some of them felt chronic, and I just couldn't solve them. And I was really frustrated by it. And I felt like my new boss was not understanding about it. We were having a hard time. And I was just bitching and bitching and bitching. And this guy, Michael Duplantis, listened to me for probably 10, 15 minutes and said, yeah, no shit, there's problems. That's why we pay you. And I was stunned. He's like, listen, if we could send out a memo and everything just happened, why in the hell would we need to pay you? We pay you to handle the problems, to deal with the issues, the stuff that's not supposed to happen that happens, all the sideways and the things and the tacking and all that stuff that needs to occur. That's literally your job. that piece of clarity was so great for me at that time. Like, stop trying to get it perfect and you get to take the summer off.
Yeah.
It's not the way that it is. It's a nonstop painting a battleship, however you want to see it, but it's a never ending quest
Yeah.
to perfection, which is impossible to achieve, but you never stop heading in that direction.
So what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Who, other than that, that was the most solid advice. I think the other best advice I've ever had came from some of my spiritual gurus, some of those leaders in my life. Um, and there's been plenty of them. Garrett J. White probably being the most well known in that group. I'm a certified trainer with Wake Up Warrior, and one of the things he said, and this sounds so trivial, but some guy was admonishing him for owning a Lamborghini. And he said, if I had your money, that's just not what I just wouldn't waste it on a car. And And he's like, what's that thing cost? And Garrett says, that's about $250,000. Guy said, that's what I'm saying. Like, what, I don't have that kind of money, but if I had it, I wouldn't spend it on that. And Garrett said, well, how do you know? How do you know? When was the last time you had an extra $250,000 laying around with nothing to do with it that you could go spend on a car? So that struck me in an amazing way, right? Because it sounded so cocky, but at the same time, I thought to myself, always be careful, right? Just reminded me of an important lesson, probably drilled to me by one of my grandfathers, is don't be shy. But don't pontificate and swear that you know things you know nothing about, that you're not sure of, right? There's a way to present that piece of information. It seems to me, or my experience has been, or, so far, this is what I think, rather than this is the way that it is, which automatically implies I'm right, which means if you differ than me, you got to be wrong.
Yeah.
And again, him putting it that way was just a great way, a great reminder to me of something that I already understood and believed in, which is, there's a way to communicate with people, especially if you want to enlist them in what you want them to see, right? And it's not telling them; they need to see it, right? And there's a way to do that. So,
So the backbone to greatness is definitely consistency, and you've been at this for a while. You're really good at what you do. What gets you up every day? What motivates you to do good work and to also evolve as a human being yourself?
right, right. So I don't think I'm sure there's some way that it can be done. I'm sure there's an example of it out there somewhere, but I don't know of any examples where people are restricted in their personal growth, but have professional success. We can point to some people that maybe they made a lot of money, right? Or they built a really big company and their life was a mess. Um, and again, that's fine and dandy. But if you ever hear about these stories, and I've gotten to meet a lot of them through my personal development journey, they're miserable. They're miserable. So you can't tell me that's a success when their life sucks, right? They've been divorced several times. They've lost their families. They're massively overweight, or they're out of shape, or them. The list goes on. They're just miserable people. So for me, the personal development journey is a critical one, not only for my own health, but for me to deliver as well, right? There, personal development, one of the things it gives you is an emotional maturity. And that emotional maturity is necessary to have when you're in a room full of big egos, right? People that are successful and do well. And they're paying you to be there, but that doesn't mean they're not going to fight your message. And if you have some emotional insecurity, you're likely to be triggered by some of the things they're going to say, because they're going to challenge you. They're going to push you to prove to them what's possible through an operating system that you're trying to teach them. So to me, what motivates me every day, quite frankly, is I go to sleep and wake up thinking about my clients. And some people say, maybe they said it's an obsession. But one of our core values is we are maniacally obsessed with results. And so I'm not interested in being the kind of coach where you get to tell cool stories at cocktail parties about this really cool operating system we do. And I could care less, right? If it doesn't show up on the P&L, who gives a shit? And so I am constantly and maniacally obsessive with my clients getting great results. Um, and again, fulfilling our purpose. And our purpose is clear. It is that we want to redefine the word freedom for ourselves, our clients, and those that will never meet us. So we're talking about having such an impact on a company that we help the owner and leadership team redefine what freedom means for them, and then that impacts their spouses and children, etc. They'll never meet us and they'll never know where the genesis of that was. But when mom or dad gets to spend more time at home, or is not quite so crazy in the brain anymore, or whatever, right? Just feels more at peace because they're clear about the next level of scale. We've had the kind of impact we want to have.
The thing about business in America, it's a lot like sports. There's all of these models that have just risen up and they become behemoths. What's the business model that you admire the most?
So we have a custom operating system that is built upon all of this stuff, all of these books.
Yeah,
Um, the bones of it is really similar, I would say, to EOS, to Gino's Whitman's traction
yeah,
and the entrepreneurial operating system. Because Gino did what we've done. He just picked a bunch of other pieces of things he had read, put them all together into one system. And we've done something very similar. So um, uh, we're not EOS implementers, but I like EOS, and I think it's really powerful. It's just limited in what it can do, and the EOS world worldwide insists that you only teach their principles and nothing else. And we think Harnish and Gerber and all of these all of these other people, Collins. There's some other terrific authors out there who have put together some amazing concepts and ideas, and so we've built tools around those things. Lencioni and Maxwell, I could go on and on. So all of those piece parts, I think, are important. The great thing about having a custom system is we can plug whatever thing we need to plug in for this particular organization, right? So we can identify where the next big thing is and get after it with them with a specific tool. So it might be Crabtree's simple numbers. It might be that I can't tell you. It might be something that Harnish does inside of Scaling Up, which is another tremendous operating system. But they all have certain limitations because they only teach their thing, whereas we gather from the entire sort of spectrum, and we have built a lot of different tools, and we'll plug those in where necessary for that particular client situation to solve the next big problem, which of course reveals the second next big problem, and we go after that one. So
yeah. So, of all of these things that you've accomplished in your career, what are you the proudest of?
I was just writing this morning in my journal. Occasionally, I will run into a former employee of mine at some place along the way that I've stopped, to be a salesperson, a manager, or something. And the coolest thing in the world, especially cool when I'm surrounded by other people, and I get to hear this, is, man, you changed my life. That's the most rewarding thing in the world to me. And they'd be like, I didn't know I could be a salesperson, and now I'm a sales manager of a multi-million-dollar organization. Or, from a management, I had no idea what I was doing. You promoted me, and I still don't know why, but here I am at this level now. Or, wow, this lesson you taught me, and it's always stuck with me, and I've always just been a backbone of what I thought. It's really, really cool to hear that. And again, occasionally I get to run into people that tell me that story, and that's the most fulfilling thing in the world professionally to me. The money is an ancillary benefit. It's just what comes along with doing that for others.
So, if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life up to this point, what advice would you give? And would that version of you listen?
My advice would be, don't stop spending all that money drinking and invest it. And the answer is no. He definitely would. um, no, I don't know. I have a funny perspective on that, right? And that is that, what about the possibility that all the information that's available to know just exists right now, and it's there for you to figure it out and go learn it. It shows up, it seems, right? Like, oh, this amazing lesson showed up at just the right time for me. My perspective is, it's been there the whole time. You just noticed it, right? Like you were finally available to hear this particular message. So, 60-year-old me talking to 18-year-old me would have gotten bored real soon. Like, all right, great to meet you, Pops. I've got things I want to go do.
Yeah,
Bye. And
yeah.
I'm sure I'd have listened for a while, but the truth is, a lot of what I would want to share, 18-year-old me wasn't ready to hear and wasn't ready to accept. I'm sure some of those guru leaders and teachers I had through the years told me a bunch of things that I don't remember in my 20s. But that wasn't what I could hear in that particular space and time. What I would, there was some other great lesson I was picking up, but I couldn't hear the other ones just because, it's trite, but it is like an onion, right? It's layers. And they were talking about things way over here, and I was operating way over there.
Yeah.
And had to solve those first before the other ones even made sense, before they were even could be revealed to me. So
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, employees, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
yeah. Wow, these are some terrific questions, man. I'm glad I spent some time in my meditation journaling this morning. Kind of
Yeah.
got, always gets me in that frame of mind.
Yeah. Getting the
So
juices flowing.
yeah, yeah. So ask me that again so that I can rethink through that.
So all of us have these pockets of people in our lives, family, friends, employees, colleagues that
Yeah.
all see us in a different way. We play these roles in their lives, but ultimately we're in control of what we do. What is that perception that you have that you're putting out into the world?
Yeah. So I would think that my friends and family would say that ordinarily I am loud and gregarious and out front, and you're never going to guess what I'm thinking and what's going on and what I'm feeling, etc. So I'm not a very private person in those ways, and I'm going to be out front of in conversations and those things. I think that's what the world would say about me. Interesting. I had a conversation with my youngest son the other day about what confidence was. And I mean, I was telling him that, in high school and shortly thereafter, I'm sure lots of people thought I was amazingly good. They were like, well, if I could be as confident as he is. And the truth was, I was just as scared and nervous and just as much as anyone else. Maybe just little more willing to give it a go and fail, and not how can I put this? It's like this idea of no fear, like, oh, fuck off, get out of here. Everybody has fear. The difference is, can you operate? Can you be in fear and still execute? Because that's the difference. And there's terrific testimony for that in the great show Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
One of the actual veterans from there, he talks about that. He goes, he goes, yes, we were all scared. We were just kids. We had no idea. He goes, I guess the difference was, even though I was scared to death, I just could still just go about and do my job. He goes, some guys just couldn't. They just froze. And to me, that is the difference. Like, wow, that's really scary. It's going to be uncomfortable, and I could fail miserably and look really foolish, and then still not just do it, but be able to execute under those circumstances, right?
Yeah.
They think about the PGA Tour. Every one of those guys, every one of them could give you an exhibition and blow your mind what they can do with a golf ball. Why do some consistently win and some never do? It's their ability to still execute in the most nerve-wracking of situations in a game with little subtle nuances and amazing bunch of physics, and they can execute it exactly the way they want to, despite the fact that they're nervous and there's a lot of pressure and there's a big crowd and there's TV, and they can do it anyway,
Yeah.
right? And to me, that's the key, is no matter what the emotional situation is, can you be calm enough to still operate at a high level?
So, Jason, if anyone wants to learn more, reach out, hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
The best way to find us is at exitmomentum.com, or you can email me directly, jason at exitmomentum.com. Um, we do, if you go to our page, you can schedule a 15 or 30-minute session with me. It's completely free, and I will just spend that time. One of our core values is that we deliver value with every interaction, and it keeps us on purpose. Like, we don't have a contract, we have an agreement, so that as soon as we're not delivering value, you can let us go. Of course, that keeps the pressure on us to constantly deliver, but it also allies some fears. But the underlying idea that even in a 30-minute conversation with us, we're likely to expose some issues, but at the same time, I promise you'll leave that conversation with at least one idea you can actually go execute on, whether you engage with me or not. And I think that's again that's just it's an underlying theme of what we do. And so if you go to our page and you click on that button, schedule that time with me, I promise you're going to get tremendous value from that, even if you decide not to move forward, or we find that we're just not a good fit, which is possible, right? You might still need some coach terribly, but I'm just not your one. Like we just don't fit, or vice versa. And if we detect that, we'll call the game. But yeah.
Right on, man. Jason, this has been great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your story. I appreciate it.
10-4. Thank you so much, Jeff.